Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the York series. Sitting within North Yorkshire, York is a very historic place with 31 civil parishes within its city boundaries. Here's one of them for your enjoyment. Welcome back to York, everybody. Now this should seem very familiar where I'm standing right now because this is where I ended the last episode. The car is still parked in the same position, but I look a little bit different because I've finally taken my fleece off. It was too cold to start the parish of Rawcliffe, but now it's definitely warmed up. So let's head around the next one here in York. This is Clifton Without. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Continuing with York's northern suburbs, today we're in Clifton Without. Without what, you may ask? Well, if ever you see a place name with that strange suffix, it literally means the part outside. In this case, it means the part of Clifton outside the city of York. Confusingly, it is actually in York these days. Its name is a reference to the city's pre-1996 boundaries. Now that's cleared that up, let's see what it's got, shall we? Clifton's most well-known landmark is by far and away Clifton Moor, a huge retail park that was built on the site of the former RAF Clifton, which we discussed briefly in the Rawcliffe episode. The airbase spanned both parishes, and as a result of that, there are parts of the retail park that fall on both sides of the boundary. Clifton is also known for its school, the Vale of York Academy, formerly known as Canon Lee School. Part of it is undergoing a huge transformation at present, and in this episode we'll learn exactly what that is. Other than that, once again, this is a very residential part of York. There are vast swathes of suburban streets and landmarks are a bit thin on the ground. Even so, there are still some of note, like a local nature reserve called Clifton Backies, a big Aldi store, and even a caravan park. To sum it up, it's the busy York suburb that was famed for aviation and now is a go-to for many shoppers. Let's cut the chatter and make our way around another lengthy route. We begin on Oakdale Road where we left off in Rawcliffe. Watch for the guy on the scooter. I thought those weren't legal on public roads, but then what do I know? Using a short footpath off this, we're into a caravan park, although don't go bringing your tourer here expecting to pitch up. This is a traveller's site maintained by York City Council. York only has 3 of these. The other 2 are in James Street in the city centre and at Osbaldwick. The end of the road brings us to Water Lane, one of the major thoroughfares in Clifton. On it there's a large Aldi store, which opened its doors in 2017. Behind this there's a storage business. This opened in 2020 on the site of a former grain store. It cost £3 million to build and it covers some 50,000 square feet. All of this is easily reachable on public transport. Clifton has many bus services, but at this stop you'll be after the number 6 primarily. So a varied start, a caravan park, a huge supermarket and a huge storage unit as well. And now we reach Clifton Backies. There we go. Let's walk around this next. Designated as such in 2002, Clifton Backies is a large nature reserve which dominates the eastern portion of Clifton Without. It was part of the former Clifton airfield and was last used in the Berlin airlift in the late 1940s. After that, it was allowed to return to nature. Before the RAF were here though, the land originally belonged to St Mary's Abbey before becoming a field known as Moor Broats. It was cultivated under the strip farming system in medieval times and still retains some ridge and furrow earthworks. Back to Water Lane now and to Victoria Farm Estate, a small industrial area right next to one of Clifton's newest housing estates. With street names like Miller, Barley, Thresher and Granary, and being located close to that former grain store, I reckon a mill once stood here, or at least close by. Whatever the case, we've now hopped over to the other side of Water Lane as we continue south via Tamworth Road, and some more new houses. So far a very modern part of York, isn't it? Lots of new build housing, and you always tend to find in these new build areas you've got little playgrounds like this one. Really small ones, just with a handful of equipment and maybe a swing or a slide or some bouncy things. Not a massive great big playground like you would get on a playing field or something like that, but you always tend to find in these new areas there's always a space reserved for them. Seem to find it all over the place. In fact, further backing up my point about the play areas, you don't need to go far to find another one on Brailsford Crescent. This one's a bit bigger though. Lilbourne Drive forms the parish boundary with York to the south and returns us to Water Lane again. At the end of this road is the Clifton Hotel. The Clifton Hotel is the only pub in Clifton Without. Now, given how big this area is, I was surprised to learn that fact, but at least it means it'll be well used. After walking back up Water Lane for a while, we then turn left onto Rawcliffe Drive. The reappearance of housing means once again we're back into suburbia. Since 1998, Bright Beginnings Day Nursery has been along here. This, however, closed in 2022 due to the retirement of its owner. At its peak, it could accommodate 33 children. Nearby, there's a hair salon called Hairways. We're making our way now to Clifton's secondary school. Now, of course, because this one is so suburban, there's no point in going down every single street because they all look similar to what I've already shown you, sort of. Anyway, in this suburbia, you will find a school, and that is the Vale of York Academy. That's our next stop. The Vale of York Academy was established in 1941 as Canon Lee School, built to serve York's northwestern suburbs. Even today, it still gets referred to by its old name. Built as it was in wartime, it was also used as a hospital and a refuge shelter, which is why inside you'll find it has unusually wide corridors. It was extended in 1972 and 2016 saw its name change. This was part of a series of changes that included becoming part of York's Hope Learning Trust. Right next to the academy is the former Clifton Without Junior School, one of the two which merged together to form Clifton with Rawcliffe Primary in 2011. Whilst the building is currently empty, it soon won't be. In 2022, North Allerton-based firm Walter Thompson began work on a £5.3 million transformation of the building, which will see it become the Clifton Explore Library Learning Centre. When complete, it'll be 5 times bigger than the current library on Rawcliffe Lane. So this board tells you everything you need to know about what this is going to be. It's incredible. It's telling you everything. And I like this bit about it as well. You told us to keep as much of the original building as possible, so we'll renovate and keep original features. That's good. It means the history of the building is not completely lost when it's turned into that right there. This next section sees us walk up Rawcliffe Lane past a few residential side streets such as Reeton Avenue. We're heading for the current library. This of course will soon be replaced by the new one at the old school. It's an important community hub which hosts many groups and activities on a weekly basis. Behind the library there's a large play area. Oh, and by the way, there's a row of shops close to here which includes a post office. They're not on the route though, they're just off it at the end of East Home Drive. Next for us is this scout hut. Not just any old scout hut, mind you. This is the York Sea Scouts, the website of whom I've linked below. Rawcliffe Lane then becomes Green Lane and once again becomes vastly residential. Halfway up Green Lane there's a small industrial estate, but it's not really anything of any major note. Instead I opted to turn up Beaverdyke, which handily provides us with a neat little link back to where we began. And then it starts to become more residential again, and you start to hit the sort of border region between Clifton Without and Rawcliffe. In fact, Rawcliffe Lake, which we saw in the Rawcliffe episode, is up there. If you just carry on up there, I'm at the end of Fewston Drive here, you can get to the lake via a few streets and a few footpaths. So we're nearly at the end. I'm going to go up Fewston Drive though and take a route back to the beginning via this street because I think it's easier. And that'll be it for the walk around Clifton Without. But I do have a few driving bits to do at the end of this episode, including, of course, Clifton Moor. And so to Clifton Moor, the massive retail park that flanks Clifton and Rawcliffe to the north. It's almost unimaginable how much this area has changed since the 1930s. It was 1933 when an air circus visited York and flew from Rawcliffe Meadow, the site of which is now the retail park. It demonstrated the viability of the area for a commercial airfield for York. It would lead to the opening in 1936 of the York Municipal Aerodrome. Before the outbreak of World War II, the airfield ran a flying club and an air taxi service, but no scheduled flights. In 1939 it was requisitioned by the government and was renamed RAF Clifton. It's a very different landscape now. Clifton Moor has plenty of household name shops, like the ones you've just seen, as well as a View cinema, which is where we are right now. Back in the 1930s, all of this would have seemed a little far-fetched to the locals. It would be impossible to list all of the well-known names on this retail park, but here's a few. McDonald's, KFC, B&M, Burger King, Smith's, Pets at Home, Wilko's, DFS and a Tesco Extra. The list goes on. As I mentioned in the intro, Clifton Moor is so big that parts of it fall within Rawcliffe's boundaries. Here, for example, is one part that does. This is a large B&Q warehouse. So you might be asking yourself now, are there any parts of the airfield left amongst all this modern retail heaven? Well, the answer is yes, although they would be quite difficult to access. As we make our way into the last section of the retail park, here's a map showing you Clifton Moor from above. Look to the north of the A1237, the main road which runs around the park's northern edge, and you'll see tiny parts of the old runways and perimeter track. There's a similar area to the east which is occupied by a car hire company and a Skoda car showroom. The rest is under the retail park. It's quite difficult to know which bits of Clifton Moor are on which side of the boundary. Some bits, of course, are in Rawcliffe, some bits are in Clifton Without. But I'll tell you one thing, this retail park has got a Greggs, and I don't care which side of the boundary it's on. That is my last destination here in this part of York. Time for me to move on to my next one. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot. This has been the Parish of Clifton Without, and I'm out.